of perception, from multiplicity to duality to unity, proceeding from ignorance to enlightenment, the state of supreme knowledge. Maharishi.
Let us hear from the old group of last course. Any experience you want to discuss? People from the last course were engaged in long meditations. Any experience they want to bring out? Yeah.
Yesterday I was meditating and I was breathing, but the air was very heavy and warm. Then I lost my awareness, like in deep sleep, for a few minutes. And then very faint thoughts come, and I felt transcending, but not was not DC, was like I was in the transcendental and in the relative at the same time.
How many have had some such experiences? Almost everyone. Transcending and yet in the relative, both together. It's like when you are nearing the goal, you are yet on the path, but you do see the goal, and yet you are on the path, and the vision is of the goal. So you see the goal, and you are yet on the path. This is that kind of experience, huh?
Maharishi, you've said, on the path to realization, a man must experience himself as separate from the world, as in the world, but a witness to it. I have 5 questions relating to that.
State that first part again.
Yeah. Maharishi has said that on the path to realization, a man must experience himself as separate from the world, a witness to it. My first question is...
It will be good to establish this ground first, and then on this ground we'll raise the trees, buildings. It is on the path of enlightenment, it is necessary to experience the separateness. What is the state of enlightenment? What is the path to enlightenment? When these two things are clear, then we would find out if separation is necessary. What is necessary in the path to enlightenment? What is the state of enlightenment? Enlightenment can be defined as lack of ignorance. In itself, it should be fullness of knowledge, fullness of experience, enlightenment. One is enlightened means one knows everything that there is to know. One has experienced everything that there could have been to experience. State of enlightenment. It has its own characteristic in the abundance of life. Life is abundant, infinite, boundaryless, unbounded. path to this state of unboundedness, where man is fulfilled for knowledge and experience. Path to it is from individual awareness to unbounded awareness. Individual awareness means when you see the flower, then you are aware of the flower alone. Maybe this flower and you are aware of the background to some extent, but that is hazy. Primarily the awareness is of the flower, whatever you see. Perception takes the total attention. It absorbs total awareness. And when the perception contains total awareness, it is only individual perception. It has boundaries, limitations. It has boundaries, but it overshadows the awareness. That boundary overtakes the full awareness. That's what perception means. When I see the flower, then I see the flower. And that's all. And then, when I see the flower, then the perception of the flower, the mechanics of perception are such that the vision of the flower overshadows the seer. The awareness of the seer is contained within this boundary of the flower. This is individual perception. When the perception is individual, whatever the awareness, that is overtaken by the object, individual awareness. And when the seer is not able to maintain himself, his own awareness is shadowed by this, pure awareness is not available. Like the white nature of the cinema screen, the white color is not available. What is available is the picture that falls on it. That man that is there, that tree that is there, something that is there, the color that is there. So it is the picture that dominates, and the real nature of the screen is not available. At the cost of the nature of the screen, the cinema is enjoyed. Perceptions in the world, infinite perceptions in the world, innumerable, they are all enjoyed at the cost of the real nature of the enjoyer. The enjoyer himself is, we use the word, bound. The enjoyer is bound in the object of joy. This is individual perception. This perception results in ignorance of one's own unboundedness, ignorance of one's own infinite value. I lose the infinite value and enjoy the limited value. This is what individual perception does. Perception devoid of the value of unboundedness overshadows the unbounded nature of the self and gives the joy of the boundaries, some object within boundaries. This is ignorance, where the experiencer is not able to maintain his value. He gets lost in the value of the experience. This is called individuality. Individuality. This is called the state of bondage. Bondage because one doesn't know oneself. One is just the football of perceptions. Whatever one perceives, that alone is. Whatever one perceives, that alone is. The perceiver is lost, is overshadowed. And when the perceiver, the experiencer, the knower, is a football of the object of knowledge, then this is called ignorance. The man doesn't have the guts to live in life. He doesn't know how to live. No technique of living. He just doesn't know how to manage himself. He's lost. He's lost here, he's lost there, he's lost there, he's lost there. A lost person. A lost experiencer. A lost knower. Such a lost knower wishes for enlightenment. He wants light. He is lost in the darkness of his own real nature, which is unbounded bliss, infinite consciousness. So when the knower is lost in the ignorance of his own nature, then he wishes for enlightenment. Path to enlightenment will be that the seer who has no technique, no method, no way to save himself when he is experiencing something, he has no knowledge how to stand on his own feet. Every time he has something in front, he leans on that thing. This, in metaphysical terms, is called identification. One gets identified with the object of experience, and this identification is total identification. And when the seer identifies himself with the object of perception, then he does not have the strength or ability to identify himself with his own awareness. His awareness is totally captured by the object of perception. This is a lost soul, a lost man, materialistic man. Because in his awareness only the matter remains. The spirit, the value of the spirit, the value of the self is no longer existent. Only the value of the matter remains. This is called material life. Life which is wholeness of matter and spirit. That wholeness of life gets lost. Partial value of life, only material value of life remains. When the only material life remains, then that life is naturally called material life. Life is not only material. It is material and spiritual both together. And this we don't have to learn from anyone. We know. We have the body, we have the mind, we have the soul. Body and the soul, mind in between. Both together make life. Both together make life. But when one has not the ability to stand on his own feet, that means to maintain his awareness, to maintain himself, he gets completely sold out to what comes in front. No standing on one's own state of awareness. This is called life in ignorance, life in bondage, material life. Life in enlightenment will be when the seer maintains himself and in his own light he enjoys the light of the object of experience. His own light is not shadowed by the light of the object. His own nature is not overshadowed by the nature of the object. And when the nature of the self and the nature of the object both are shining, none of the two is in darkness, then that is the state of enlightenment. Enlightenment. The self is enlightened, and the enlightened self doesn't overshadow the value of the object, so the full value of the object is lighting the object, full value of the subject self is lighting the self in his full glory, the object in his full glory. Two fulls make one life, and this is 200% value of life. This is fullness of life. This is enlightenment. Life in enlightenment. No aspect of either subjective value or objective value is overshadowed. One is not surviving at the cost of the other. The object is not surviving at the cost of the subject. The subject is not surviving at the cost of the object. Subject shines in his full unbounded glory. The object shines in his full glory within the boundaries. The object in time and space, but full value of the object. Subject transcendental, unbounded, beyond time, space, and the full value of the subject. This awareness gives full value to life, and this is called life in enlightenment. What is the value of the object? Fine, we say boundary. The object has boundaries. So many inches long and wide and high and broad. And boundaries. But then, what is the structure of the boundaries? Boundaries have only apparent phase, obvious surface values. Underneath, the boundaries have no boundaries, because underneath that which is omnipresent. Underneath all these boundaries, beyond all these boundaries, within all these boundaries is that which is equally present within the boundaries, beyond the boundaries, same substance of infinity, unboundedness, omnipresence is connecting the areas within the boundaries and outside the boundaries. It is only on the grosser value of the object that the object seems to be surrounded and seems to be isolated from its environment. It's only on the surface that this flower seems to be belonging to only within this range. But if we go deep within this obvious cognized value of the flower, that which we can see, when we go to the areas which cannot be perceived by the senses but can be envisioned, conceived by the mind, intellect, can be experienced by the ego in the transcendent, on that level these edges do not exist. The transcendent is as much here as it is here. It's as much here as it's here and here and here and here. Because it's transcendent. It is beyond any specification. And therefore, this being the ultimate value of the flower, the real value of the flower is also infinity, unboundedness. In our experience of meditation, we know the inner subjective value is transcendent, unbounded, omnipresent. But intellectually conceiving, we also find the object in the same unbounded nature in its real quality. The real quality of all this, it appears to be bound, but in reality it's a part of the unbounded area. It's unbounded. And when the unbounded value of the flower is cognized, when we cognize the boundaries of the flower, then perception is complete. The abstract, unbounded, transcendental, pure being, and so much long and so much wide and so much thick and tall boundary of the flower. Cognition of both values, gross and transcendent. Gross value of the flower, transcendental value of the flower. When the vision is so complete, then the flower is in enlightenment. The flower then has the same value as the self has. The experiencer is not overshadowed by the object of experience when the experiencer is spontaneously experiencing the object also in its full value of the infinite. Because when the perception of the flower is in terms of the infinite, then the infinite cannot overshadow the infinite self. And therefore, the shadowing nature of perception disappears. When the unbounded nature of the flower is by nature not able to overshadow the unbounded nature of the self, how can it? Self is unbounded, fine. Object is unbounded, fine. The two unbounded meet together. No one is to overshadow the other. Because both are unbounded. Both come on the same level. This is existence or realization of the two fullnesses of life. Two fullnesses of life. And life in its two fullnesses is life in fullness. Upanishads are very clear about it. Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. Two-fullness, the story of two-fullness. This is full, this is full. The self is full, the non-self is full. And then the non is disappeared. Because when this object is full and subject is full, then there is no non-self. Non doesn't exist. What exists is existence, pure. Self and self. Self and self. Self full, the other self is full. This is when the unbounded awareness of the self, unbounded awareness, which is the nature of the self, could maintain its own integrity, unshaken stability, absolute structure of life, unshaken, unshadowed. Then is the ability for cognition of the full value of the object. And the full value of the object has two aspects to its fullness as compared with the perception of the flower in the unenlightened state. Perception of the flower in unenlightened state, this is wide, this is so big, this is this, which the senses can see on the gross level of perception. Each flower is also sap, colorless sap. This white color is based on colorless sap. Finest quality of this is colorless. Like that, finest quality of every manifest life, every particle of manifest value has within it the finest relative structure. And the finest relative structure is bright and brilliant, full of light. We give it a name, celestial. Finest structure of relative existence is celestial in nature. Finer than the finest is more than the celestial. It is infinite. It ceases to be a structure. Finest structural value in time and space is celestial in nature. So perception of the finest value of an object means perception of the object in terms of celestial value, celestial perception of the object. When the perception rises to its finest value, finest in the relative, celestial. That is celestial, this is celestial, this is celestial, this is celestial. What is that? From our everyday ordinary experience we know the day we have received some good news, something, the heart is open to joyfulness, like that. And then everything seems to be good, and everything seems to be good, and everything seems. No matter what you see, it's so beautiful. No matter what you see, it's so beautiful. But if our Body is tired, mind is tired, some distress, some depression, something. Wherever you look, it's dim. Wherever you look, it's dim. It's dim. That brilliancy, everything is so good, is no more existent. So, when our perception is clearer, things are brighter. The friend is the same, the house is the same, but someday, so good to enter. Other day, don't like to go, even you avoid that path. Now, take this sense of perception to a much higher level of contrast. If you could be extremely happy, eyes will see more clearly. And when you could be extremely happy, if you could be very, very happy, great happiness means at the same time great purity. Both things go together. If the system is purer, you have the ability to enjoy more. If the system is stressed, you lose the ability to enjoy more. So, greater happiness simultaneously means greater purity. In a stressed condition, in an impure state, you just can't enjoy life. Purer, more enjoyment. If the system is very pure, the perception of everything will be extremely precious, valuable. It's called celestial perception. Everything even the finest value of everything is clearly perceived. Even though you experience the flower, but you experience these boundaries, everything in the finest relative value. Finest relative value, full of brilliance. Perception becomes more refined. Finest relative value then will be found in terms of finer than the finest, which is abstract, infinite, unbounded. When we say celestial, we mean within the boundaries, but of a very great dignity, great brilliance. And then when the perception becomes more, it goes beyond boundaries. Infinity. Every perception in terms of infinite value. Infinite value is the value of the perceiver himself. So everything as dear, as precious, as invaluable as myself. Everything in terms of myself, self, and whatever is perceived also is in the value of the self, and therefore self and self. Where is the matter gone? Only the spirit remains, only the self remains. When everything is perceived in terms of the self, then the perception is full. Nothing is hidden from perception because the totality of the objective value, the totality of the value of the object is clearly cognized. Each object in itself is infinite. Infinite. The value of the object is infinite because it is the infinity which is permeating everything. All pervading is that one element which we call infinity, abstract, pure being, pure consciousness, pure intelligence. That is omnipresent, abstract infinity. This state of life, where everything else is in terms of oneself, is called the state of unity. Unity consciousness. Consciousness of unity. That unity is dominating. No diversity, no duality, loss of diversity. And where? On the level of life. On the level of life means on the level of awareness. Level of awareness. Our awareness then does not have differences, distinctions dominating. It has unity dominating, oneness dominating. Dominating word is very important. Unity consciousness. Consciousness that knows total harmony. In the midst of all the different things, there is harmony. Now, this is making clear to ourselves the hidden value of life. This, everything. On the surface, everything is different from one another. All-pervading also is one thing. Infinite is all-pervading. So the reality of life is, there is individuality, there is universality, but as long as our awareness is dominated by the sense of individualities, it is dominated in the sense of difference, diversity, difference. So long, that which is really abstract and connecting everyone into one level of life, that is out of our awareness. So, eternal harmony that is permeating, eternal harmony that is really the basis of all these different things, that is out of our awareness, and only the individualities, the differences are on the level of our awareness. This is opening ourselves to one area of life which is full of difference. And that area of life which is full of harmony, a level of non-difference, that is out of our awareness. When the area of difference is dominating in our awareness, then we call that life bound, because it's boundaries dominating. Boundaries dominating. The reality of this structure of life is that even when the boundaries are there dominating, but they are dominating only on the surface, and they have nothing to do with the reality of oneness at the depth, at the basis of everything. And because that is omnipresent, that oneness is not only hidden behind the structure of the surface value. No, it is as much on the surface as it is at the depth. When we are looking for sap, then we say, oh, the sap is within it. How to find it? Fine, go within it and you have the sap. But when we have located the sap there, and just a pause, where is the sap? Oh, even on the surface, even the surface structure of this is also nothing but sap. In the course of investigation, the sap is underneath it. But when the knowledge of the sap, which in the beginning was conceived to be underneath this, was found, that knowledge became a stepping stone for another knowledge that The sap is not only underneath it, it's even on the surface of it. And then we find sap is on the surface, sap is in the middle, sap is underneath. Everywhere, in and out, is sap and sap and sap. And when this knowledge is unshakably established in our awareness, then when we are experiencing the battle, the abstract oneness of the petal with everything surrounding it is already established on the level of our awareness. So there have been some stages of revelation, some stages of gaining knowledge which have eventually brought us to understand that these differences, these boundaries which distinguish this object from its surrounding, these boundaries do not exist. This on the level of awareness, on the level of knowledge. On the level of perception, yes, this petal is so far, wide, long, thin. This is the opening of awareness to that which is uniting the boundaries with its surrounding areas. This knowledge makes the boundaries release their restricted value, so that even when the eye sees its boundaries, awareness knows it's unbounded, the same, all-pervading, omnipresent, unbounded is this. It's just like the knowledge. The eye sees that the sun is rising from the east and traveling on to the west. Every day it's rising. But the knowledge is embedded in our awareness. And once it is there, it's there for all times. I see that the sun is rising and traveling. The awareness is fixed on the truth. This earth is rounding. And it has double axis of rounding. It rounds on its own and it rounds around the sun. Knowledge is there. Even though, this is an important point, even though what I see is completely opposed to what is held as truth. What I see is completely opposed to what is held as truth. The earth is rounding, the sun is stationary. I see the sun is rounding, earth is stationary. Two opposite features, but both we live with all ease and comfort. Never has been a trace of doubt, no confusion, no discomfort on the level of intellect or on the level of the eyes. Eyes don't get sore when they see something which intellect refuses to accept. And intellect doesn't get sore when the eyes practically bring the experience which the intellect has nothing to do with. These two values are harmoniously, comfortably, easily, spontaneously lived without a doubt. We don't even talk about it. It's a normal, natural structure of life that something is seen and something is held. Boundaries are seen, unboundedness is held. Natural, spontaneous reality of perception, but only when that value which is underlying everything, which is permeating everything, that value of transcendent being has been stabilized on the level of our awareness, then that value stabilized, these perceptions of differences don't have much significance other than we see that they are. The friend is a friend, and the train is a train, and the mountain is a mountain, and the Mediterranean is full of blue and all that. These differences are there. Life is being behaved in the differences, but the truth of absolute unity, harmony, undividedness, truth of non-difference is held. This is what is meant by unity consciousness. Unity consciousness does not mean that we just don't see anything other than flat being or self, as flat as we have in the transcendent. In the transcendent, our experience is it's all flat, nothing exists, and amness and isness and being and intelligence, pure, unshadowed and unadulterated. That alone is that situation does not mean state of unity consciousness. There is no doubt that that also is valid in the name unity consciousness, but it's a temporary phase. On the way, when we experience that, then that unity is at the cost of everything. But that unity is not stabilized. When the unity gets stable, then the diversity, the differences being real, the unity is real in a stable manner. The diversity is real in a changing manner. The unity is real in a non-changing manner. Diversity is always changing. It's changing, so it's real. But that which underlies it, that which permeates it, that which is the ultimate essence of it, is stabilized. So stability as the basis of ever-changing structure of existence. Now, a little bit of knowledge between stabilized state of unity and non-stabilized state of unity. Unity we feel in transcendent. Transcendental consciousness is unity. But it is such a delicate state of unity that with the slightest spur of the mind, it's gone. Very delicate. Extremely delicate. That state of unity which is so delicate that with the slightest spur of activity it cannot maintain its existence, that cannot be said to be the state of fullness. Can't be fullness. Maybe a glimpse of fullness, but it can't be lived in life. So, that delicacy is like the sprouting of a seed. It's so delicate, then grows a little bit. It's yet so delicate, a big wind will throw it off. But as the wind starts to blow it off, its roots go a little deeper and little deeper, and the wind tries to blow it off. And at every time the wind comes, the root hang it fast, So more blasts, deeper the stability of the tree, more blasts, more cyclones, hurricanes, deeper it is able to sustain, and then it stands high, immovable. Even moving, it becomes immovable. That pure awareness, that unbounded awareness which used to be disturbed with the slightest spur of a boundary, slightest spur of activity means boundary, slightest, faintest shadow of boundary would disturb the unboundedness. But exposing the stream of life to that value and to the value of activity, and then to that value, and then to that value of activity in the great dynamic spur of action, that immovability of being remains steadfast. And when it remains steadfast, then differences and underlying reality, they become both real. This can be compared to the perception of the sun and the knowledge about it. A boy, a small boy, he sees the sun and he wants to know from the mother, what is this coming up here and there? And the mother says, yes, it comes and goes. And every morning the sun comes up and the boy is up and watching the sun, what is it? And every evening he says, oh, look at the sunset. He sees the sun coming up and going. In his awareness, it's fixed. Every morning, this time the sun comes up. This time it goes back. He comes to his class, and then the teacher says, oh, it's like that. As you go in the train is moving, but what you see is the trees are moving. And he says, oh yes, I've seen it when I was traveling in the car. I felt the trees were moving and I was fixed. Then the teacher explains, oh, like that it happens. This earth is moving, the sun is stationary. He does some experiments here and he says, oh, like that. Now, the state of the boy, on the first day when he hears teacher telling him that the earth is stationary and the sun is stationary and the earth is moving. Long in the past, his impression was the sun is moving and we are stationary, sun is moving. And now the teacher for the first time says, no, the sun is... He gets this information. And this is shaking to the boy. What he has known seems to be completely wrong, but what he is knowing now doesn't have much bearing deep in his mind, so he shakes. Half knowledge. Full knowledge is that he's going, because so many years mother has been telling him, yes, this is it. Mother doesn't have to tell, he sees. He's going like that. And now he starts to know that the phenomenon is completely reverse. Now, it takes a while for the boy to become really convinced in his awareness that the sun is stationary. And if it is stationary, the earth is moving. Even when he doesn't experience the earth moving, but it gets deep into his mind. But this depth of awareness that the sun is stationary takes some time for him to stabilize. Until then, there is great upheaval, great doubts, great controversy from what he experiences with what he is told. He knows from his experience this is the truth. He is told this is the truth. To reconcile between them and to live both truths of his perception and the information, knowledge, even though they are self-contradictory. But the boy has to live with it. And before he can comfortably live with both things at a time, he has to go through lots of upheavals. Just like that, a man who has been completely identifying himself with the object of perception, every time he sees the object, that is all that is on the awareness, who is seeing what is behind, nothing there, only the object is dominating. A man who has been on this level of purely materialistic value of life, now suddenly his awareness opens to that which is non-material, unbound, non-isolated, boundless, abstract, being, intelligence, whatever we call it. His awareness opens to that. Now, he sees this is the truth. He sees that is the truth. Both are the truth of his own experience. He experiences that unboundedness. He experiences this boundaries. Because with that unbounded experience, the body gets relaxed and the health becomes better. There is some charm in it. That experience itself is so delightful. It's bliss consciousness. It's very absorbing. It's very intelligent. But then, in order to reconcile between these differences and that oneness of the transcendent, it takes a while. It takes a while, so that he may behave in the differences and he may stand steadfast in that unity. Takes a while. His awareness may be steadfast in that unity, and his behavior, his senses, perception, all on the level of diversity. It takes a while. And it takes a while because the machinery of perception has to be modified. Machinery of perception has to be modified for holding on that knowledge which will keep steadfast that level of oneness and which will not dismantle the vision from observing the bound areas of the objects. Boundaries and unboundedness, both to go hand in hand in the most unconcerned manner. Just as I see the sun and the awareness is that it is stationary, it's not moving. To get to a state where there is no conflict between knowledge and perception, between knowledge on the level of intellect, which is out of the field of the senses, and perception, which is within the range of the senses, within the range of the senses. To have a state of life between the realm open to senses and between the realm open to intellect, the realm beyond the senses and the realm within the senses, is a great controversial realm of life. One is transcendent, one is so obvious. And the nature is completely controversial. There is that non-difference. Here is all difference. So the difference and non-difference, both to be spontaneously lived. No question. The seeing of the sun, enjoying sunrise and sunset and calling it sunrise and calling it sunset, this does not distract us from our steadfast, immovable, deep-gone awareness that the sun never moves. Both are there. In the state of unity, you are you, different from me. You are me. absolutely I. Both these things exist in the most spontaneous manner. You are you with your specification of boundaries and all that. I am I with my specifications of my boundaries. But you are absolutely I, because I am unbounded and thou art unbounded. There is that life within boundaries. There is that awareness of boundless infinity. Most spontaneously. And because the two of these, because out of these two, the one unbounded, a little bit more lordly, more graceful, more lordly. Life gets dominated by it spontaneously. Dominated, only dominated. Gets dominated by it more. In this state of enlightenment, the differences exist. Not that the matter is transformed into all the value of consciousness. Matter is matter. And matter is consciousness. Only consciousness is abstract, permeating, pervading, and matter is a mysterious expression of it. Mysterious, just like sap and the petal, mysterious expression. The petal is mysterious expression of the sap. The reality is that sap is sap. Sap alone is. But the diversity is also there, but not in a dominating value. In that state of unity, harmony dominates. Differences are experienced on the level of the senses, but the intellectual awareness of harmony, eternal harmony, dominates. It is capable of dominating because that unbounded is bliss. And here, waves of that bliss. Even though we see the waves, so many waves and so many waves and so many waves, but what we see in the ocean, we see the ocean. The vision of the ocean, what you are looking at, Mediterranean. Actually, what you see is wave, 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 wave. You see so much and so much and so much and so much. Somewhere you see blue, somewhere you see green, and somewhere you see white, something rising, something falling. These are the waves that you see. But what you say is beautiful vision of the Mediterranean. It's the vision of the ocean, even when it's the vision of the wave. If the knowledge were that these waves are of Geneva Lake, maybe, then what you look at is Geneva Lake. Even when you are looking at the waves, but you say Geneva Lake. And the formation of the wave is the same, but then you say Mediterranean or Pacific, Atlantic. Whatever is the reality at the basis of the waves, that is what you hold even when you see the waves. You see the waves and you say it's an ocean. You see the waves. You behave in the waves, individualities, boundaries, and you say unbounded life. This is what gives us the reality of a state of enlightenment, that with all the diversities, unity dominates. Now, the state of an enlightenment, state of ignorance, has been that boundaries dominate, this object, this object, this object, innumerable objects, from multiplicity of awareness, one has to rise to the unity of awareness, from multiplicity to unity, from innumerable number to unity. Nearest to unity will be naturally what? Duality. When from innumerable you are proceeding towards unity, fine. What you proceed on, eventually you have to come to duality, and from duality you step on to unity. Stepping on to unity means unity dominating. Before this state of unity dominating awareness may arise, what will come? Duality dominating awareness. It must. If unity is a reality, it must be a mathematical reality. And as it is, the very word unity, the mathematical reality, oneness. And if we are starting from a chaotic phase of diversity, then the last step from which we will step on to unity will be the step of duality. Duality alone can be the basis of unity. In the state of ignorance, our awareness is in the value of the object. Whatever object we experience, that is the value of our awareness. In the state of ignorance, whatever object we see, that gets imprinted on the retina, on the nature of the mind, and then from moment to moment it keeps changing. Awareness is never of one type. This we say perception of multiplicity, awareness of multiple nature. Variety is dominating in awareness. And when we have to refine the awareness, come to unity, so before we step on to unity, duality has to dominate our awareness. And if duality has to be the basis of unity, then before we step on to unity, we must have to step on a practical level of life where duality will be dominating. We have to start living life where duality is dominating, then only on that level of living will develop the life in unity. Duality means what? Two things, no? And two things means what? Object and subject. Because we are talking in terms of perception and awareness. So we have come to a level considering this state of unity consciousness. We have understood that even though eyes would be experiencing multiple phases of diverse structures of creation, but the awareness will have oneness dominating. Then we are considering the relationship between the subject and the object, no? And then a state lesser evolved than that would mean that the object in his full glory, subject in his full glory, full glory of the subject we have seen, it's unbounded. Self is unbounded. That we experience in transcendent, unbounded, abstract, absolute, unbounded. That is our subject. But the full glory of the object, bounded glories of the object, full glory of the object, celestial perception. Before it has been perceived in the infinite value, it must be perceived in the celestial value. And when the celestial value of the object is there, then that is the full value, fullest relative glory of the object. Fullest relative glory of the object, celestial. Grossest relative value of the object, gross, colorful. So, but this perception of the object, this object is no more able to overshadow the subject. The subject is able to stand by its feet. In the beginning of the meditation, the mind goes to the transcendent, and that is the self. Slightest spur of activity, the self is gone, action remains, some thought comes, some perception comes. But when the nervous system is purer, there are no stresses and strains, then that pure awareness is maintained on the level of awareness even when one comes out to perception. But in that case, the perception of the object is there. The subject is not overshadowed by the object. When the subject is not overshadowed by the object, then the object in its value, subject in its value, two both separate from one another, and this is the state of duality. This is CC, cosmic consciousness we say, because transcendental consciousness, which is the nature of the self, and in that nature the self bears no activity. The self cannot bear any activity. When the activity comes, the self gets lost in the activity. The activity overshadows the self. Activity only remains. The transcendental awareness gets lost. This is transcendental consciousness. But when that consciousness becomes a little bit more stabilized, then that abstract awareness is not lost even when some activity of the objective perception starts to be. And then the object is seen as the object, subject is held as infinite. That means the identification of the object and the subject, which used to bind the infinite value of the subject, is now no more valid. The identification does not bind the subject. The object shines in its glory, subject shines in its glory, both are there intact. One is not able to challenge the other. This is of freedom. The self has freed himself from the boundaries of perception of the object. The self is in freedom. The self is freed itself from the clutches of the object. The matter is not able to overshadow the value of the spirit. The spirit here, the matter here, this is life in duality. Clear perception, vision. Vision has two values now. On the side of the viewer, it's unbounded. On the side of the object, it's bound. So unbounded and bound going parallel. Duality. This is the state of duality. From the time of cosmic consciousness till the time of God consciousness, this whole range of life is life in duality. All the cognition of the world of celestial value is always there with the self undisturbed. The unboundedness of the self remains undisturbed. The perception remains intact. And this starts to happen from the time we call cosmic consciousness. In cosmic consciousness, the self is there and the object is there for its perception of the surface value. When the deeper values of the object begin to be known and cognized, and when the deepest value of the object, celestial nature, becomes a direct cognition, then the self unbounded and the celestial finest relative, two together, coexisting. And this is life in duality. From here, harmony dominates and we call unity of consciousness. So, mathematically speaking, duality is the basis of unity, even though the reverse is also true. In fact, unity is the basis of duality, but depends on from which side we proceed to which side. From the state of ignorance when we proceed, then we start from multiplicity, step on to duality, and then step on to unity. And when we consider the evolution of life, manifestation of the unmanifest absolute being, then from unity, duality, from duality to trinity and multiplicity. So when we say state of enlightenment, then of course we are talking in the state of unenlightenment, leading it on to the state of unity, which is enlightenment. And this, the experience of duality, it's not that dual personality which the psychologists call some disease. You have to be careful, huh? Something like that. It's not dual personality, it's nothing. It's just like that direct perception of the sun and the knowledge about it, even though they are self-contradictory, but we become used to live both of them spontaneously. And in that case, perception, even though it's real, but the knowledge dominates. The awareness holds, the sun doesn't move, even though the eyes see thousands of times every day and throughout life they see. Like that, the unity awareness, that's why that state is called supreme knowledge. The state of unity in life is called the state of supreme knowledge. It's the state of knowledge, the saturated, extreme, absolute value of knowledge. And that knowledge dominates. Quite in the similar way as the knowledge about the relationship of the sun and the moon, the knowledge dominates, even though perception is completely contradictory to knowledge. So the oneness of all the diverse creation dominates in our awareness, even though against this knowledge, perception is found in diverse ways. Perception, behavior in diversity, but the knowledge of unity. And this kind of spontaneous knowledge and perception, even though they are in themselves completely self-contradictory, we are able to live both of them in the practical level because of the modification of the mechanism which is perceiving. The mechanism that perceives, the machinery of perception, the body, the nervous system. When this nervous system becomes modified, then this ability of direct perception of diversity is not able to overthrow the steadfastness of knowledge of unity. You have the structure of unity clear. Unity does not mean absence of cognition of diversity. Because the cognition has to be on the level of senses. Perception always has to be on the level of the senses. Understanding has to be on the level which is beyond the level of the senses. Intellect is beyond the senses. And intellect also is a vehicle or a means of cognition. Knowledge is a means of cognition. Intellect blossoms into that knowledge. Knowledge blossoms into intellect. So, intellect also is the faculty of knowing. Senses also are the faculties of knowing. And when the two fields of knowing are self-contradictory, then the final field of knowing, which is the field of intellect, takes the upper hand. It does not nullify the perception on the grosser, but only that the gross ceases to dominate. The senses, the field of sensory perception, the field of diversity, infinite differences and division, multiplicity, this field doesn't overthrow the knowledge derived on the intellectual level, on the level of the intellect. The knowledge derived on the level of the intellect holds intact. The perceptions derived on the level of the senses hold intact, but life is dominated by the influence of the intellect. Even though lived in the field of diversity, it is lived in a steadfast manner in the awareness of unity. And to take our awareness from the domination of diversity, to take our awareness from the domination of the field of senses to the field of intellect. From diversity, we enter into the finer phases of diversity. Transcending the finest phase, we get to the state of unity. And from multiplicity to unity, on this path, the last step, last but one step, is the step of duality. CC, the field between CC and GC, cosmic consciousness and God consciousness. This field is the field where the life in separation, life dominated by subjectivity and objectivity equally well, starts to be more refined, starts to be rising in the value of unity, starts. Transcending GC gets to that state of knowledge. On the basis of what the knowledge develops? Purifying process of refining the nervous system. Purifying process of refining nervous system. Automatically it happens. So, when one meditates, exposes one's awareness to the field of the transcendent, exposes one's awareness to the field of activity, transcendent activity, then proceeding on to the path, proceeding on the path of unity, one starts to experience this diversity. I mean this duality, two things. Previously, in this state of ignorance, when one used to see this and see this, everything was a joy, everything was joy, everything was a joy. But then the unbounded bliss was missing from experience. And now when one opens oneself to unbounded bliss, one says, it's fine, oh, it's so beautiful. It's so rewarding, it's so nice, I want to go back there, and I want to go back there, back to that experience. That experience being so beautiful, so rewarding, so satisfying, so fulfilling, it starts to dominate more and more. And this is how the overshadowing strength of the perception of the object becomes less and less. The self is overshadowed less and less. Self is overshadowed less and less means that unbounded awareness is overshadowed less and less. That unbounded awareness becomes more and more dominating, more and more dominating. And when slightest shadow of the objective boundaries, or the boundaries of the object, are not able to overshadow the self-experiencer, then the object in its glory, the subject in its glory, the subject in its unbounded glory, the object in the glory of the boundaries, both are separate from one another. You can experience, you can imagine the cinema screen, it's white, green picture falls on it. The white color of the screen gets shadowed, only the color of the picture remains there. Something could be done to increase the glow of the screen. White glow could be raised, it could become more and more glowing. It could be raised to such a degree that the green color is also seen, the green tree is also seen, but the white glory of the screen is not completely shadowed. The inside glow of the white screen could be enhanced, and then a situation could be produced that the green tree is also seen and the white color of the screen is not also completely shadowed. And then if the glow could continue to increase, all the green tree will be in terms of the white screen. In this case, the only difference is that the tree will not be seen. It will be all become white because it is glowing, glow, all white. Here the analogy fails. The analogy of the screen will not accept the green tree at all, but the glow of human awareness, maintaining its value to fullest extent, then it does not go to jeopardize the value of the object. Does not. It can even experience the object in its full value, yet will leave the senses to enjoy the boundaries of the object, even though on the intellectual level there will be no boundaries, oneness. All the atmosphere, all the environment will be in terms of the object. The whole thing will be all pervading on the intellectual level of knowledge, understanding. But on the level of the senses, senses will enjoy full. This is the state of enlightenment where the senses enjoy the maximum glory of perception. The intellect enjoys the maximum truth of the unbounded bliss consciousness. The ego enjoys both values at the same time, localized and unbounded. The ego with the mind associates itself with the senses, perceives the boundaries of the objects, experiences, multiplicity, ego, associating itself with the mind, projecting through the senses, falling on the objects, enjoys the perception of the objects. Intellect, informing the ego, keeping it alert with the knowledge of oneness. The ego then enjoys the full glory of the intellect, the full capacity of the mind and senses. The ego enjoys the two values 100% full. This is the mechanics of the perceiving machinery, which enables life to be lived in the field of differences and yet in an unbroken manner enjoy the infinite value of oneness. And this happens on the intellectual level. The ego enjoys oneness. On the individual level, the mind associating with the senses enjoys this and this and this. But because the value of the information established on the intellectual level is so great, is so enormous, so unbounded, that naturally dominates. The ego then is enjoying its universal value while even behaving with the bound values in time and place. And when the ego enjoys the boundless in the waves of the boundaries, then is the real joy of life. The president of the state, a monarch of the world, big, huge power, intelligence, a great territory of influence. Being a monarch, when he behaves within the boundaries, his children, his friends, his family, this, then is the real joy of the kingdom. Otherwise, if that unbounded kingdom, that almighty power, is not enjoyed in the waves of life, in the isolated waves of life, then where is the joy? If the whole ocean were to be all silent, it won't even be perceived as an ocean. It's the waves that make the ocean really enjoyable. It is the existence of these differences in their ever-changing structure that makes significant unity consciousness, life to be enjoyed on these levels of the isolated waves when it is lived in the unboundedness of oneness of eternity, both together. And therefore, when through transcendental meditation you have a direct highway to this evolution from the field of multiplicity to the field of unity, then on the way, when you start to experience some duality, something, some separateness, some division, it's a thing to be enjoyed. And if in the beginning days, here and there, due to great, long, confined state of life, when awareness used to identify itself completely with anything that we perceive. This has been the long habit. A man who has been living in the hut long time is being invited to live in a palace, and he thinks, oh, my hut. There could be a time when the invitation comes, and between the arrival of the invitation and the real occupation of the palace, there could be some nights where, so my hut, what is my hut? When the awareness was identifying itself with every little tiny bit of complete valueless values of relative life. Valueless, value means compared to the infinite value. All these isolated in time and space are really valueless. So compared to that big, huge dignity of life, all these small things, they don't matter. But then, when this was all the matter of life for a very long time, then disassociation with this, rising to state of freedom, getting to unboundedness, could cause some concern on that the transition period between the information of the receiving of the invitation to leave the hut and actual occupying the palace. Once you have occupied the palace, never remember the hut. It's out of proportion. It just doesn't come to awareness. But before it was all association, all association. So, living life of bondage, insignificant isolations everywhere, if one starts to feel a little loss of these isolations, then it's a transition period. But this clear knowledge of the states of evolution of consciousness and how it happens, and in this procedure, in the interim period, in the transition period, if we start feeling a little strange, something here, all is well and wisely put. So, one conclusion from this evening. Duality is the fertile field from where we can step on to unity. Duality is the fertile field from where we can grow into the value of unity. So this experience of duality, this experience of separation, is a very good sign of progress and achievement. Previously, you used to be completely identified with the flower, and now we are separated from the flower. Flower has its own dignity, we have our own dignity, and both the dignities are so far apart from each other that it's not possible for them to be together anymore. The dignity of the flower is in this 2 inches length and 1 inch breadth and this much of thickness. And the dignity of the self, unboundedness. So, these two dignities being so far apart, we experience them as they are. This is the nature of cosmic life. Cosmic life, there is a level of oneness, all-pervading, and there is the structure of limitations, differences. So difference also is there, unboundedness also is there. This is cosmic life. That's why it is called CC, cosmic consciousness. Cosmic means all-inclusive. All-inclusive means inclusive of relativity on the objective level of perception and subjectivity on the And the universality, cosmic, on the level of subjective value of perception. Subjective value of perception, objective value of perception. Limitations on the objective value, unboundedness on the subjective value. Both have become completely clear. One is not able to overshadow the other. It's a state of freedom for the object. It's a state of freedom for the subject. Object and subject. Two fullnesses of life. But this is a stepping stone for a life where both these two fullnesses are structured in one wholeness of life. Oh yes, there is a state of life where you can work and be not hurt. But there could be a state of life where not only you don't hurt yourself, but you can create great minute things. Enlightenment has its levels. One state of enlightenment is CC. Another step of enlightenment is GC. The final state of enlightenment is UC. We'll take your questions tomorrow if they remain.